The story opens with quiet detection data from a Chinese deep space observatory that identifies a fast-moving interstellar object officially designated 3I/Atlas. Initial readings show impossible acceleration patterns similar to Oumuamua but more extreme. Chinese scientists capture the first high-resolution image, revealing a symmetrical metallic geometry embedded within a tumbling mass. The image is released publicly. Global reaction erupts. NASA and other agencies attempt to explain the object as a natural body, but spectral analysis shows structured heat signatures and repeating radio emissions. China announces it will launch a rapid response probe using an experimental propulsion system. NASA scrambles to respond. Political tension builds. The object changes trajectory slightly, without any gravitational cause. A Chinese probe transmits close-range images before signal disruption. The object appears partially artificial, covered in regolith but with geometric seams. Then the probe loses control. Meanwhile, Earth begins receiving a narrowband signal encoded in prime number sequences. Scientists across the world collaborate in secret. The signal is decoded as coordinates, not from where the object came, but pointing toward Earth. The object is slowing. Governments prepare contingency plans. The final act reveals that 3I/Atlas is not a ship in the traditional sense, but a dormant relay or probe that activates only when detected. The script ends with a final chilling realization. It was never passing through. It was arriving. Now the full script begins. The first anomaly was almost ignored. Deep beneath the mountains of western China, inside a silent array of cryogenic sensors and adaptive radio dishes, a string of numbers appeared on a monitor that should have displayed nothing more dramatic than background noise. The night shift technician assumed it was interference. Cosmic rays sometimes danced across detectors like static from an old radio. But this pattern did not flicker. It moved. It tracked. Within hours, the object was confirmed by multiple observatories, including the massive aperture of the National Astronomical Observatories of China and independent analysts affiliated with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Its trajectory was hyperbolic. Its velocity exceeded anything bound to the sun. It was interstellar. The designation came quickly, 3I/Atlas. The world had seen this before, at least in name. When Oumuamua streaked through the solar system in 2017, detected by the Pan stars, it challenged assumptions. It accelerated slightly without visible outgassing. It tumbled strangely. Scientists debated endlessly, natural or artificial, comet fragment or alien sail. Then it was gone. 3I/Atlas was different. It was larger, faster, and it was approaching from a vector almost perpendicular to the galactic plane, as if it had dropped in from above. Within 48 hours, high-resolution optical imaging was captured by China's new orbital telescope platform operated in coordination with the China National Space Administration. The image was processed, verified, and then, after internal debate, released to the public. The world stopped. The object was not irregular in the way rocks are irregular. It was not a loose aggregation like a comet nucleus. Even through layers of dust and debris, symmetry was visible. Flat planes intersected at near-perfect angles. A ridge ran the length of it like a spine. One hemisphere appeared smoother, darker, almost metallic beneath the regolith. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, part of NASA, issued a cautious statement within hours. Preliminary analysis suggested unusual morphology, but no evidence of artificial origin. Spectral signatures were consistent with complex carbonaceous material. The tone was calm, measured. Privately, it was not calm. The object's light curve revealed controlled modulation, not chaotic tumbling, intentional rotation, as if it were stabilizing itself. Radio observatories in Australia, Chile, and the United States began scanning for emissions. For a day, there was nothing. Then a narrow spike appeared in the hydrogen line frequency band, too precise to be noise, too clean to be natural. The signal pulsed once every 61 seconds. China announced an emergency press conference. A senior astrophysicist stood before the emblem of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and confirmed that 3I/Atlas exhibited structured surface geometry inconsistent with typical cometary bodies. The words were careful, the implications were not. Markets dipped, social media ignited. Conspiracy theories multiplied faster than astronomers could refute them. NASA insisted no extraordinary claims could yet be made. The memory of Oumuamua hung in every sentence. Scientists had learned caution the hard way. But then 3I/Atlas changed course. The deviation was slight, a fraction of a degree, yet no planetary gravity could account for it. The sun's pull did not match the vector shift, nor did solar radiation pressure. Something had applied force. China moved decisively. An experimental rapid intercept probe, originally designed for near-Earth asteroid defense simulations, was accelerated for launch. The mission profile was brutal. It would not rendezvous. It would simply fly past at extreme velocity, capturing as much data as possible before vanishing into deep space. The launch was watched by billions. As the rocket cleared the atmosphere, commentators spoke in hushed tones. This was no longer academic curiosity. This was contact. Days later, the probe approached 3I/Atlas at relative speeds exceeding 50 kilometers per second. Cameras activated, instruments hummed, telemetry streamed. The first close image transmitted for 8 seconds before compression artifacts scrambled the frame. It was enough. Under the dust layer were panels, not random fractures, panels, hexagonal segments arranged with mathematical precision. Along the central ridge were indentations forming a repeating sequence, prime intervals. Then the probe's instruments registered a surge in electromagnetic flux. Its guidance system flickered. Thrusters misfired. The final transmission showed something opening along the object's spine. A seam widening. Signal lost. Around the globe, radio telescopes locked onto the hydrogen line frequency again. The pulses had changed. No longer a single beat every 61 seconds. Now it was a cascade. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Prime numbers. At the National Astronomical Observatories of China, mathematicians worked alongside astrophysicists. The sequence extended beyond simple primes. It grouped into triplets, forming spatial coordinates. But not coordinates of origin. They mapped inward, toward Earth's orbital path. NASA convened emergency panels at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. European agencies joined. Data was shared quietly despite political tension. No nation wanted to miscalculate. 3I/Atlas was slowing. Not by natural deceleration, not by outgassing jets, by controlled thrust. The object was entering a high elliptical orbit around the sun. Public statements grew more restrained. Words like artifact were avoided. Words like phenomenon were preferred. Then infrared analysis revealed something chilling. Internal heat. Not residual warmth from interstellar travel. Structured thermal pockets arranged symmetrically beneath the surface. As if systems were activating, the hydrogen line signal ceased. In its place came something lower frequency, broadband, complex. It was no longer just mathematics. It was modulation. Linguists were brought in, cryptographers, AI systems trained on pattern recognition. Days blurred into sleepless nights. The breakthrough came unexpectedly from a graduate student comparing the modulation rhythm to pulsar timing arrays. The intervals matched Earth's rotation period, but offset, adjusted. The signal was synchronizing. Across continents, power grids flickered as ionospheric disturbances increased. Satellites reported minor anomalies. Nothing catastrophic, yet. Governments prepared contingency protocols, not evacuation, observation. The object completed one solar pass, its orbit now stable. It did not depart. It remained. Another seam opened along its surface. Telescopes captured a faint glow from within. A structure emerged, not extending outward, but inward, like petals folding back to reveal a core. And then, for the first time, the signal shifted into something unmistakable. A repeating transmission encoded in binary, structured in blocks of 8. When rendered visually, the blocks formed images. The first image was crude, a circle, a smaller circle orbiting it. The second was clearer, a diagram of the solar system. The third was unmistakable, Earth. Silence filled mission control rooms worldwide. This was not random emission, it was targeted acknowledgement. China held another press conference through the China National Space Administration, this time jointly with international partners. The tone was measured but no longer dismissive. The phrase non-natural origin cannot be excluded echoed across broadcasts. Privately, analysts reached a consensus. 3I/Atlas was not a ship in the traditional sense. It bore no visible propulsion arrays, no windows, no weapon signatures. It was a probe, dormant until detected. Its trajectory had not been random. It intersected regions of space dense with habitable zone stars before altering course toward the sun. A surveyor. And detection was the trigger. Weeks passed. The object's orbit tightened slightly, but it did not descend toward Earth. It maintained distance, as if observing. The final decoded block of transmission arrived on a quiet morning. Unlike the previous mathematical constructs, this sequence translated directly into ASCII characters once decrypted. The message was short. Observer acknowledged, awaiting response. No threats, no demands, no promises. Just a statement. Humanity faced a choice it had rehearsed only in fiction: respond or remain silent. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and at observatories under the Chinese Academy of Sciences, teams drafted potential replies, mathematical proofs, chemical signatures of life, a simple prime sequence echo. Debate raged. Some argued silence was safest. Others insisted communication was inevitable. Above, 3I/Atlas continued its silent orbit, panels faintly glowing against the dark. Telescopes tracked every movement, every fluctuation. For the first time in history, the sky did not feel empty. It felt aware. And somewhere within that symmetrical structure of metal and dust, systems waited, not hostile, not benevolent, simply patient. Because 3I/Atlas had not stumbled into our system by accident. It had been searching, and now it had found something worth stopping for. The final camera frame captured by a deep space array showed the object's central core rotating slowly, aligning toward Earth as if focusing. The signal repeated. Observer acknowledged, awaiting response. Humanity had officially been noticed, and the universe was no longer silent. The repetition did not fade. It strengthened. Across arrays in Chile and Australia, through the vast dishes listening from deserts and mountaintops, the same narrowband whisper continued to pulse with mechanical patience. The cadence no longer felt like a test. It felt like expectation. Inside control rooms at the National Astronomical Observatories of China and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, screens glowed with spectral lines that refused to drift. The signal locked onto Earth as if anchored. The object's orbit stabilized further, subtle thruster flares visible in infrared like faint exhalations. It was not falling toward Earth, but it was no longer merely circling the sun. It was matching us, matching our position in space with incremental corrections so precise they bordered on intimate. Each adjustment shaved kilometers from the vast gulf that separated it from our world. Public broadcasts attempted calm. Officials from the China National Space Administration and NASA spoke of continued observation, of no immediate threat. The words sounded rehearsed. Markets remained volatile. Faith leaders filled halls. Hashtags surged and collapsed in cycles of hysteria. Then the signal changed again. The prime sequences returned briefly, but now they were nested inside a broader carrier wave, modulated in amplitude rather than frequency. Artificial intelligence systems trained to identify linguistic structure began flagging statistical irregularities that resembled grammar. The pulses were no longer isolated integers. They were arranged into repeating clusters separated by consistent intervals, like sentences divided by breath. In Beijing, a joint task force assembled under the Chinese Academy of Sciences brought together mathematicians, semioticians, and cognitive scientists. In Pasadena, analysts at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory mirrored their efforts. Secure channels hummed between nations that only months before had struggled to agree on orbital debris protocols. Now the sky had unified them. A young linguist noticed something almost embarrassingly simple. When the signal blocks were translated into binary and then mapped to pixel grids, the resulting patterns formed not just images, but sequences of motion. Frame by frame, the blocks animated, a circle orbiting a star, a third body marked with a subtle highlight, a vector arrow pointing outward, then inward. It was a map, but not of origin, of approach. The arrow did not point from deep interstellar space toward the sun. It pointed from the object's current position toward Earth's orbital lane, stopping short by a measured distance. A boundary. Days passed without incident. The object maintained its path just beyond Earth's hill sphere, hovering in a gravitational balance that required constant correction. It was as if it had calculated the exact line between intrusion and presence. Then came the flare. Infrared sensors recorded a sudden surge of internal heat concentrated along the central ridge. The seam widened further. High-resolution telescopes captured something extending from the interior, not a weapon, not a dish, but a lattice structure that unfolded with deliberate grace. It shimmered faintly, reflecting sunlight in geometric fragments. The radio signal amplified, not louder in volume, but broader in bandwidth. It spilled across frequencies, not chaotically, but with structured overlap. Receivers worldwide registered harmonics that interfered gently with upper atmospheric layers. Auroras bloomed at latitudes that had never known them, curtains of green and violet rippling over cities that stared upward in disbelief. Power grids flickered but did not fail. Satellites glitched but recovered. The message arrived in full hours later. This time, the ASCII translation was longer. It began with the familiar line, "Observer acknowledged," awaiting response. Then additional characters followed, arranged in nested brackets like clauses within clauses. When decoded, they formed a proposition, exchange of reference. The phrase puzzled analysts until a physicist at the National Astronomical Observatories of China proposed an interpretation. Reference could mean coordinate systems, a synchronization of frames of measurement, a shared understanding of space and time. If the object sought reference exchange, it was not asking for culture, not asking for language, it was asking for physics. Within hours, a draft reply circulated between agencies. It contained nothing political, nothing biological, only constants, the speed of light, the Planck constant, the fine structure constant expressed in binary. Humanity distilled to equations. Debate erupted again. Some argued that sharing constants revealed nothing. Others feared it revealed everything. If the object already possessed advanced propulsion, it likely knew these values. But perhaps this was ritual, a handshake protocol encoded in mathematics. While governments argued, the object acted. Its lattice structure brightened, and for the first time, optical telescopes detected a coherent beam projecting not toward Earth's surface, but toward empty space just beyond our planet's orbit. The beam was not destructive. It was a scanning line, sweeping slowly across a region of space where Earth would pass days later. A rendezvous point. The realization settled heavily across control rooms. It was not descending to us. It was inviting us to approach it. China announced plans for a second probe, more advanced than the first, equipped with hardened shielding and autonomous navigation capable of adaptive response. The mission would launch under a joint banner, carrying instrumentation from multiple nations. The rivalry that once defined space exploration had been replaced by something else: necessity. Launch day arrived under a sky thick with anticipation. Billions watched again as engines roared and flame consumed the launch pad. The rocket rose, carrying humanity's question toward the waiting enigma. As the probe accelerated beyond Earth's gravity, 3I/Atlas adjusted its orientation. The central core rotated until its lattice faced the incoming craft directly. The radio signal quieted, narrowing to a single stable carrier frequency, as if clearing static before conversation. The probe reached the designated region of space and decelerated relative to the object, cameras activated. For a moment, the feed showed only the blackness between stars. Then the object drifted into view, vast and impossibly symmetrical against the void. Up close, the regolith appeared thinner, as though deliberately shed. Beneath it, metallic planes intersected with precision that no natural fracture could replicate. The lattice extended fully now, forming a circular aperture at the center of the spine. Telemetry indicated no hostile emissions. The probe transmitted the agreed-upon constants. Binary streams flowed from its antenna, encoded in the simplest modulation scheme conceivable: the speed of light in vacuum, Planck's constant, hydrogen's spectral line frequency, the mathematical fingerprints of a species that had learned to measure its universe. Silence followed. For 6 seconds, nothing happened. Then the object responded. The lattice pulsed once, emitting a burst of radiation not in radio but in visible light. A flash so bright that telescopes across Earth recorded it simultaneously. The pulse carried modulation embedded within its intensity curve. Optical Morse. Back on Earth, instruments decoded the light into binary sequences faster than the human mind could follow. The data was dense, layered, compressed beyond any algorithm humanity had devised. Artificial intelligence systems strained, processors overheating under the influx. When the first fragment resolved, it was not an image. It was a star map, not of our galaxy, of something beyond, a region of space unfamiliar in structure, clusters arranged differently, a sky seen from elsewhere. Coordinates followed, but not absolute ones. They were relative to the constants we had just transmitted, as if the object required our frame of reference to anchor its own. Exchange of reference. The meaning crystallized slowly. This was not a scout searching for conquest. It was a relay seeking calibration. A messenger from a civilization so distant that even light required ages to bridge the gap. It could not speak until it understood how we measured reality. The probe drifted closer under automated guidance, stopping just short of the lattice aperture. Instruments detected no gravity anomaly, no tractor beams, only a field of structured electromagnetic flux that felt almost receptive. Then the final revelation emerged from the data stream, a timeline. Encoded in pulsar references and radioactive decay markers, it outlined a sequence of events that spanned millions of years, points marked with subtle indicators, several aligned with known epochs in Earth's history, mass extinctions, climatic shifts. The object had passed through this system before, not recently, not within human memory, but in deep time. It had been here when Earth's biosphere was young. A surveyor returning at intervals measured not in centuries, but in geological ages. The implication sent a chill through every analyst reading the translation. We were not the first life it had observed here, and it had come back to see what remained. As the probe held position, a final line of decoded text appeared, simple and unadorned. Continuity confirmed. No threat, no invasion, just confirmation. Earth had persisted. Humanity existed. The object's lattice began to retract slowly, panels sealing over the luminous core. Its internal heat signatures diminished, returning to dormant levels. Thrusters fired gently, nudging it outward into a wider solar orbit that would carry it beyond the asteroid belt but keep it bound to the sun. It was not leaving entirely. It was taking up station, a guardian, a witness, or perhaps merely a recorder. On Earth, leaders addressed their nations with words that felt insufficient. Scientists spoke of epical discovery. Philosophers spoke of humility. Children drew pictures of a metallic star in the sky. The probe remained in silent orbit near the object, its instruments still streaming data. For now, communication had ceased. The exchange was complete. In the months that followed, telescopes tracked 3I/Atlas as it settled into its new path, a faint artificial glint among the natural bodies of the solar system. The sky no longer felt empty. It felt shared. And deep within that symmetrical structure of metal and ancient design, systems returned to dormancy, waiting perhaps for another interval measured in millions of years. Because it had never been passing through, it had been checking in, and now it would remain, a silent confirmation that somewhere beyond our sun, intelligence had noticed the flicker of life on a small blue world and deemed it worthy of continuity. The universe was not silent, it was patient,